Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time to get to the offensive tackle top 10 rankings for the 2025 draft class. Links are in the description to my top 70 rankings for the entire class, my big board, my website where my big mock drafts are stored, also links up there, and to the Discord channel where you can find that information, my top 70 big board, as well as my strengths and weaknesses and other notes for every player that I've scouted. And you can also find the combine data nicely sorted is up there for you, and eventually individual rankings for each position will also be up there before we get to the draft. Speaking of the draft, I will be here live streaming for the NFL draft, so please come on and join me for that. We're going to be doing the offensive tackle position today. As I've said, as you can see on the screen, this is the third least predictive position via the measurables, the physical and the athletic numbers, the combine stuff. I've been going in order of least to most important for these videos. Check out my running back and interior defensive line rankings videos if you haven't seen those yet. Links will be down in the description as well to those. The closer that we get to the draft, the more accurate these videos are, and to the end results leading into the combine, which I will be live for on the channel. So come and visit me. Drop a like if you like this video, and subscribe for more if that's what you wish to do. Let's get on into this. I'm first of all going to be going on a longer talk about what matters to the tackle position, the measurables that do or do not matter, to what extent that is, and some interestingly early results from a new metric that I'm working on creating that I call block radius. So if you're not into these nerdy types of things and all you're here for is what the top 10 rankings are, there are descriptors down, timestamps that you can jump to jump past this portion of the video if you wish. So, what matters to the offensive line? As you can see, I've got IQ, tape, technical, intangible up there. Yeah, the brains are a big thing here. You need to have good thinkers, need to be able to diagnose the defense, and also be on the same page as your offensive lineman and your quarterback while doing so. Then you've got the tape, their technical prowess, the intangibles. This is a position where the tape, mostly it doesn't really lie, especially for tackles, because they're not reliant upon what everybody else along on either side of them is doing, like the interior defensive line guys are. But are they blocking well, and how technically sound are they, will go a long way towards projecting how they'll do at the next level. Finally, for the most part, you need to have a little bit of crazy in you if you're playing in the trenches on either side of the ball. What are the most important measurables? Well, the shuttle tends to correlate the most with success at the position, and I found that actually myself out, and I've seen that at several different sources. So that is by far the best predictor that we have out of everything that we can measure on a guy. Then the 3-cone and the 10 split are also very important, just for similar reasons as why the shuttle is important. Quickness, the ability to hit their landing spots, that's very important. These things also help in recovery when getting beat early on in the reps. So just even when guys lose reps, having this type of quick skill set can help them. Then you've got the vertical jump, explosiveness, getting out of your stance, getting to the rep the quickest, always important. And the 40-yard dash is also a bit of a correlation to the success. I know I did not get that on the screen. My bad for that. I guess I just missed it. Then we've got the arm length, wingspan, and weight. Obviously, these are going to be important factors. However, I would call these eliminators, not necessarily predictors, as in longer does not necessarily equate to better. And why do I say that? Well, that's going to bring us right on into my block radius metric. I'm in the early stages of developing this block radius metric. I take their short area quickness numbers and their reach, the arm length, the wingspan, maybe the hand size. However, so far it seems to, at least at the tackle position, that muddies things up more for me, in order to come up with a number, their block radius. But of course, that number would be useless if it is less predictive than just simply looking at the arm length or some other number, the shuttle number. Well, not necessarily the shuttle. I mean, it can tell us some things, but there needs to be some sort of correlation, right? Otherwise, it's just useless. So I wanted to find out what the correlation numbers of all these other factors that we know do help to predict success. And in order to figure out if these correlate to success, of course, we have to use historical data. I looked at all guys who had over 600 snaps in the 2024 season, were not rookies, and had the numbers that we needed. I come to a sample size at a maximum of 45. Even out of those 45, they don't necessarily have all of these numbers. Onto the findings here. So, not only was there no correlation for arm length, wingspan, and hand size, but there was a negative, if anything, we'll call it non-correlation, because technically the correlation number is not significant enough to suggest that there is a correlation. But if anything, the correlation is negative in terms of the arm length and wingspan, which means as one goes down, the other goes up, and the correlation is between that and what I used as my measures of success for these 45 guys was their PFF information, their PFF scores. So their overall PFF score, their pass blocking PFF score, and their run blocking PFF score. I used all three of those to get some different measures of success here. That's pretty much opposite of the hypothesis that we would expect, right? As the PFF score increases, the arm length decreases. At the end, I did come up with one weak negative correlation amongst the three arm length, wing size, hand size, to the three different PFF scores, and that was between the PFF passer blocking ratings and wingspan. I will also add, when combining all three physical measurements, or even just arm length and wingspan, that did come close to being a moderate negative correlation. Negative correlation still, but almost moderate, past a weak correlation. So this is bringing us back to where we began. If we took this information at its surface level and were to test it again amongst a larger sample size, because this is a small sample size, and we got the same results, then we would actually start to suggest to teams to draft shorter arm length people in order to play at the tackle position in the NFL. And we know that that would not necessarily be a good advice. To some extent, it might be. I mean, if somebody had like 40-foot arms, it would make it awfully hard to block somebody that's right in front of them because their arms would just be way too long. But also, we know that if your arms are as big as my fingers here, it's going to make it really, really hard to block anybody. So there is, of course, a sweet spot with this type of deal, but generally speaking, we always think, the hypothesis would be longer arms better. And this is why we need to also think, and you always need to think, about factors pertaining to your sample set. What could be skewing your data? Well, our sample has already been pre-vetted for arm length. Everyone in this sample meets some relative minimum arm length and maximum, or they're just an extreme outlier. There are 5 players in this sample set with 33-inch or shorter arms. Those were Braden Smith, Alaric Jackson, Bernard Ryman, Caleb McGarry, and Rashawn Slater. And I can tell you, at the other end of the spectrum, the 35-plus inch arm group does not have as impressive of a list, but there are more of them. Of the 12 names, there were 7 on that list who performed as poorly as, or even more often worse than, Braden Smith, who had 66.2 PFF score. Their PFF scores were right about 66 or lower. The majority of those 12. That's, by the way, a higher percentage than these 5 players. And this makes sense as to why we find that, that non-correlation, weak correlation that we saw. There was also an equal number with PFF scores of 85 plus and 95 and 90 plus. So I think Bernard Ryman had an 85 plus PFF score. There was one guy in those 12 names for 35 plus inch arms who also had an 85 plus PFF score, but not 90 plus. And then there was one guy who had a 90 plus PFF score in each data set as well. So the same number, even though we got, working with a smaller number here at one end than the other. So once again, this makes sense why we come up with no correlation within this data set. So once we get to what I figured out here is once we get to about 32.5-inch arms, roughly, it's possible to be a tackle. There's actually one guy with lower than that. But that was Braden Smith, who had the lowest PFF score, not of the whole bunch, but out of these 5 examples here with the shorter arms. So that's about as far as we want to take how important arm length is for tackles. We don't want to start. Basically, we don't want to say, okay, this guy with 35-inch arms is definitely going to be a better tackle than this guy with 33-inch arms, 32.5-inch arms. Yes, maybe they have a little bit higher chance of success, but also I don't know how true that necessarily is. As far as the early stages of my block radius measurement go, for the tackle position, it's more predictive than just those physical measurements, just taking arm length or anything like that. There is a weak but existent positive, not negative, correlation to the player's quality of play. However, the shuttle and my movement number, which is just a number that I use within as part of creating that block radius number, were both more predictive. So maybe I'll just use that as my block radius number at the end of the day. I think and hope that the number will be more relevant when I test it against 2024 guard and center classes, which do have more, the measurables are more highly supposed to be more predictive of success as well there. So I think there's a higher chance of this measurement being success. But also, when I came up with this number, I really was thinking of the guard position and centers to some extent, but mostly the guard position. So hopefully it'll be more relevant for the interior offensive lineman. Luckily, hopefully I'll have a chance to look into that further before doing the interior offensive line video. Let's get on into this video. These are my 15th through 11th ranked offensive tackles from this year's class. We've got Holland Pierce of Rutgers at number 15. Number 14, we've got Jalen Travis of Iowa State. Both of those guys on the bigger size of things. And then at pick 13, we've got Jack Nelson of Wisconsin, who moved really nicely at the combine. Logan Brown, also a very athletic guy, picked my offensive tackle number 12 out of Kansas. And my offensive tackle number 11, just barely holding on to that, we'll see, is Chase Lunt of Connecticut. I could see him dropping back, I would say, behind Jack Nelson, possibly. So let's get on into these top 10 guys. And I have 3 tied at my 8th highest ranked tackles. So at 8C, we have Ozzy Trapilo, 6'8", 319 pounds. You can see my little bit up ahead of me here. Hopefully you can read that. I know it's going to be kind of small, but those are their combine numbers that I recorded. And if you see a difference between the weights, that is because the number that I have up top that I'm going to be saying, that 319 pounds here for Ozzy Trapilo, is actually just going to be then the average between the combine weight and their playing weight, which I figure is probably the numbers that they weighed in at for the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine Bowl are probably closer to their weight, playing weight. So for most guys, some guys are asked to like add weight, lose weight, in the meantime. But so I just kind of take the average of the two when there is a difference, and there you go. So the strengths, I'm just going to go through one quick strength, one quick weakness, and then give you a little bit of detail about each of these guys and let you know where my draft grade is. So for the strength, he plays heavier than he is, which is a good thing in this case. He's not super heavy to begin with, not light, but obviously, if you are holding your own ground as an offensive lineman, that's a good thing. He's also got a weakness here. He's got 33-inch arms, so he is on the short side of arms, and at 6'8", it becomes hard to project him to the inside. So I think there is some risk here of having a guy where it's like, basically he's just a backup tackle if he doesn't doesn't develop a little bit further. So currently, I have a late second to early third round grade on him. Obviously, there is some good high upside here with Ozzy Trapilo, and there's a lot to like about him. He's the consensus ranked 101st player, so that would put him at like borderline third, fourth round. So I'm a little bit higher on him. As a junior at Boston College, Ozzy moved from the left tackle position in 2022, where he struggled, to the right tackle position in 2023. Where he also played a second year in a row in 2024 as a senior. He performed much better at a right tackle than he had at a left tackle, and you're probably not interested in Ozzy if your team runs a zone run blocking scheme. He lacks good movement skills. You want to keep Ozzy going north to south as much as possible. He's a high-effort run blocker who specializes in pass protection. He's a patient pass protector who will help to ensure a clean pocket for his quarterback. Mobile quarterbacks will trip him up and suffer for it. System and team fit will be important to his success. That's going to bring us on to my 8B prospect in Anthony Belton, 6'6", 341 pounds. And his strength is going up against power rushers. He's very, very good against power rushers, but on the opposite end of that spectrum, speed rushers can get to him. So that is his weakness. Currently, I have a late second to early third round draft grade on him as well. He is the consensus ranked 94th player, putting him right about the late third round. So also another guy who I'm a little bit high on compared to consensus, but think the consensus on him has slowly been rising. Anthony Belton comes out of North Carolina State as a senior, 3-year starter at left tackle. He's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker with surprisingly good agility for his size. He's had a good spring, proving that he belongs as a tackle prospect during Senior Bowl events, even receiving a last rep of the day honor, something that's given to players who had the best practice at their position throughout that day of practice. Then at the end of the practice, they just put, the best tackle versus the best edge rusher and see which one wins for the day. It's just kind of a fun thing that they do at those practices. That's going to bring us on to Cameron Williams, 6'6", 317 pounds. You can see he's got elite sized hands, extremely large hands, and a very big wingspan as well. Arm length, pretty average though there in the end. Strength for Cameron Williams here is he's got the brawler's mentality. Dude brings the fight, as we talked about. The mentality part of the game is a big thing for offensive linemen. He's got a little bit of crazy in him. That's a good thing. And then but he looks like a big teddy bear if you ask me. And then you look at the weaknesses, and he's still raw. He's still young. He still needs to learn technique. And I think we'll get into that a little bit with my write-up here. So currently I have a late second to early third round draft grade on him. He is the consensus-ranked 51st ranked player right now. That would be a mid-second round draft grade on him. I'm maybe a little bit lower on him, but not by much. I'm fine with him in the mid-second round. So we talked about him being raw and the technique and being young. Cameron is a 1-year starter coming out of the University of Texas. He came into the 2024 season with high expectations, and he did not live up to those expectations. Worst off is the fact that he struggled the most versus the best competition. He's a high ceiling bet that will need to sit for a year. Additionally, there are some medical concerns from a late season knee injury that he suffered. He was unable to participate at the combine because of that. It's supposed to be a minor injury and just be something that's been nagging him. However, we haven't really seen any reporting on it, so I don't really know what to do with that injury in terms of his draft stock. It's obviously something that if it's more serious and has been let on, you could see him fall on draft day. Let's bring us to my number 7 prospect here in Charles Grant, 6'5", 311 pounds. And the strength and the weaknesses kind of just combine here. So he was a very, very well high-performing offensive lineman at the college level. However, the level that he played at in college is not, the SEC or anything. He played at William and Mary. So there is a bit of a how well can he do against better competition argument here. When it comes to his PFF grade, and he did get a 1 out of 9 on my scale, which is extremely good. That's as good as you can get. It's a scale of 1 to 9. So that gives you an idea of just how well he did on a snap-in and snap-out basis as a lineman during his college career. Once again, there's a projection that goes into that, and unlike Gray Zabel, he hasn't had, the spring, the big pushes from how well he's been doing at practices going in his favor. I will say, he definitely has not had a bad spring, so where exactly does he lie? I don't know, but we have been getting little rumblings of the fact that teams do like him quite a bit, so that's good. He's currently my 63rd ranked prospect on my big board. He's the 100th ranked prospect on the consensus big board at this point in time. A bet on Charles Grant is a bet on greatness. To begin the offseason, I had himself and Gray Zabel in the same bucket. Zabel flew up boards immediately, but it does appear that Charles Grant is slowly climbing up boards. If you put a little bit of weight on him, get him into an NFL-level strength and conditioning program, and give him some legitimate offensive line coaching, he could be as good as anyone in this class in no time. In a class that is starved of tackle, depth, and upper talent, look for him to be called earlier than the 100th pick on draft day. NFL coaching staffs will believe in their ability to get the most out of Charles Grant, and that's something you can never... that's why you see guys with all the tools get drafted early. And this is one of those guys where he's got a lot of the tools. So he doesn't have them all. He's not like some super big and strong guy, but he's got a lot of the other tools that really do matter along the offensive line. So bring us on to my number 6 ranked offensive tackle, Aireontae Ersery, 6'6", 355 pounds. You look at a lot of green across the measurables up there, so that's good. A little bit of red. And when we look at the strength for Aireontae Ersery, I have very girthy written down. And, he's a big dude. in terms of the weight compared to the height. You can see the weight. He's very heavy, but his height is average. That's where I get to that girthy number. He's got a lot to work with physically, and being heavy along the offensive line is not a bad thing. Players, pass rushers' ability to move you or not move you definitely impacts how well you do. And when it comes to the weaknesses, unfortunately, once again, talk about he does need maybe some conditioning or something like that. His body type is not perfect. He's a little bit of top heavy. His balance can get a little bit off because of that. I have a second round draft grade on him. He's my 48th ranked prospect in the class. He's 43rd ranked on the consensus board. Ersery comes out of Minnesota as a 3-year starter at the left tackle position. After a very promising 2023, he had at the tackle 1 hype coming into the 2024 season. Unfortunately, he took a step back and is now, at best, going to be taken late in the first round. A better run blocker than pass blocker, he'll be a target for zone run blocking schemes due to his highly impressive movement skills, which were on show at the Combine. And, 355 and good movement skills. Yeah, this is a guy who coaches, I assume, going to want to get their hands on unless something really comes out poorly about him. That brings us on to Josh Simmons, my number 5 ranked prospect, 6'5", 317 pounds. And explosiveness out of a low stance is his strength for me. He has a really low stance. He creates leverage. That's absolutely great. You want your offensive and defensive linemen to get low, and that's one of the things that's the hardest for these big men to do, of course. So you get somebody who can consistently do it on a down in and down out basis and gets really low. That's really great. Weakness? There are quite a few question marks yet about Josh Simmons, especially for, there's a lot of projection here. And even more than that. So the competition level that he faced in 2024 as a starter was not the best. And then he got injured. And now we've got this injury recovery. So we'll get a little bit more into that. But Simmons is currently my 35th ranked prospect on my big board. Actually, I might have moved him back a couple of spots already. But he's the consensus ranked 20th prospect. And I'll tell you why. You might see him start to go lower on my board at least. Because a patella tendon injury tear can be worse than an ACL tear. Of course, it depends the extremity in each case of which one ends up being worse, but it has the potential to be worse than just a simple ACL tear, which is what was originally believed to be the non-contact injury that Josh Simmons suffered late in October 2024, and people are still, I think, learning that that's not the case, that it's a patella tendon injury. The good news is that he came away from the Combine with good news. He's apparently ahead of his recovery schedule, and that's all great, but the recovery time for an injury like this could be up to a year. So is he ahead of that kind of schedule? It's very possible that even with good news, teams have to make the assumption that he won't be much of any kind of help to their teams for the 2025-2026 NFL season. If that is the case, then I'm almost certainly too high on him myself, and I'm higher than he is on the consensus board. In addition to that, one of the biggest strengths was how much leverage and explosiveness he was able to create from his really low stance. What does it take? How do you get into that low stance? You bend at the knees. Where's his injury? It's in one of his knees. Will he ever be able to return to that kind of play? That's asking a lot from the knees. It's a risk. I don't know how big of a risk exactly it is, but I do know that it's not a minor risk that teams will be taking on, I guess, by drafting Josh Simmons, and thus his stock definitely could be lower than it currently is in the public opinion. And I think that it probably is lower behind doors. This is an injury that not too many years ago took most guys' careers away, that they no longer played in the sport. So this is a severe injury, serious injury. He's very young, a lot of reasons to hope that he can recover from it fine. People have recovered from it now. It's kind of like how ACL used to be, something that took people out of their, from their jobs forever. So we'll see with Josh Simmons, but a lot of question marks too. That's going to bring us on to Josh Connerly Jr., 6'4.5", 312 pounds. And as you can see, some good athletic numbers for him. A little bit of a mixed bag overall here, but mostly good stuff. And what has that led to? Him being extremely explosive on tape and ultimately in his athletic testing for the most part. And the weakness for him is the memes. If you are not aware, he is the guy who got absolutely blown up by, was it Donovan Azaraku, I believe? I can't quite remember who did it. Might have been Mike Green, actually, who blew him up. He always played at left tackle in college. I think you probably want to keep him at left tackle. I'm sure you could move him to right tackle, but it'll take a little bit of time to learn it, because I think a lot of the reason, if you watch that rep, that he gets blown up and gets taken out of his shoes and sent to Mars, is that he was used to playing left tackle. Now, this is already a bit of an issue with him on tape, the getting too upright, and he can get blown up sometimes on reps. But I think the reason he really got blown up on that rep is footwork is used to being on the left-hand side, and that rep was on the right-hand side, and I think because you see him like open up at that stance, and he almost just like stops the rep as he gets exploded, because he just, I think, came out of the stance completely incorrectly, as if he was working the other side of the line, and then he got caught. So, yeah, just a little bit about that rep that I think you can excuse it in some ways, but Josh Connerly is currently my 25th ranked prospect on my big board, 32nd on the consensus big board. Josh comes out as a second-year left tackle starting out of Oregon, who showed fantastic growth from year 1 to year 2. He is an athlete. He used to play basketball and started out as a running back in football. He is scheme agnostic, but he'll be best served in a zone run-blocking scheme, as his mobility is his biggest strength. A good strength and conditioning coach will hopefully help to prevent him from ever being memed yet again. Because like I said, he does have, there is some of that on tape getting blown up. That's going to bring us on to my number 3 prospect here at the offensive tackle position, Calvin Banks Jr., 6'5", 315 pounds. And his on-field athleticism is his strength. It didn't come through fully in his numbers, but it didn't not come through. He had good combine numbers for athleticism, and it shows on the field. And in terms of his weakness, is that he leans forward too much. He overextends himself while blocking, and when you get out of that athletic base, then you are susceptible to being beat. Calvin Banks Jr. is currently my 11th ranked prospect. He is 12th overall on the consensus big board. He is sliding more and more outside of the top 20. I think he's getting picked apart a little bit too much, but more and more, I'm on the wrong side of that argument. Calvin Banks is coming out of the University of Texas as a junior. He's still young. He started all 3 years at Texas, and he improved each year as well. You always love to see that, taking his biggest jump in the 2024 season. He'll be turning 21 in March. Some of his best games were against some of his toughest competition. Given his age, skill set, and upwards trajectory, I strongly believe that a Shanahan system team will happily be drafting him in the top 15, or would happily draft him in the top 15. Working in his favor also is the fact that he is probably most teams' second best pure left tackle prospect in this draft class that lacks a lot of talent at the tackle position overall. So all the more reason to get a tackle early in the draft, as well as another reason to get a tackle early in the draft. So that's going to bring us on to my number 2 pick, because you see, I said he's the second best pure tackle, yet there's 2 more guys. So how does that work out? You probably already know. Let's get on to my number 2 prospect here in Armand Membu. Yeah, that's right. Still my number 2 prospect, not my number 1 prospect, but I almost went 1A and 1B here. 6'4", 332 pounds. There's a flaw in Armand Membu's play that concerns me. We'll start there. It's the same flaw with Calvin Banks, but I see it a little bit worse off when I watch Armand Membu, and that's once again that leaning forward thing. And what you will see when you watch his tape is that he and the defender oftentimes end up on their butts on plays, and that's because he's leaning into him, grabbing him. You see his smaller hand, his smaller arms. He's just kind of using all of his leverage to go into these blocks. And once again, that's going to leave you susceptible to more talented defenders who will take advantage of that, and you'll be left on the ground while they're heading towards the quarterback. So that's the big concern with Armand Membu. He still has that issue, and you look at the arm size and the hand size, and there's a reason for that issue. Whereas you go back to Calvin Banks, and he's actually got bigger hands, the arm length, however, but then he's got the wingspan that can help to overcome that. So it's a little bit of I feel like Calvin Banks actually has a better chance of overcoming that overextending himself too much issue with a little bit more training, whereas Armand Membu, that's, borderline more maybe something that's just a part of his game because it has to be because of his relative length. It's possible, but there's also always ways to help to overcome that through good training. So anyways, Armand Membu, a lot to like about him. Time and time again, when I look at all my strength notes, the word physicality in one form or another pops up like 3 or 5 times, so Armand Membu plays a highly physical game. I do think some of that's because he ends up on the ground a lot with the defenders, but ultimately still a very highly physical guy. He is my 7th ranked prospect in this class. I know it sounds like, he's kind of not high on him. No, I really do like Armand Membu a lot. He's 14th ranked on the consensus big board, and that's probably going to be going up after the combine. Armand comes out as a junior after spending all 3 of his years at Mizzou. He must have started late his freshman season because he had like 300 to 400 reps there, and then he took over as the full-time starter in his sophomore season. From his sophomore season to his junior season, his 2023 season to his 2024 season, he took a huge leap forward as well. He is another prospect who will be best served in a zone run blocking scheme. I don't know that Armand goes top 10 in a more stacked draft class, but he very well might this year, in part thanks to a stellar combine performance resulting in a 9.81 RAS score. That's incredibly high. That score makes him the 26th most athletic, relative to his size, offensive tackle prospect out of 1,379 others, all of those coming from between the years of 1987 to 2025. And you can check out Kent Lee Platt. He's the RAS guy on Twitter, where you can find that sort of information. And you can find that information out on, most any other prospect as well, if they've done enough athletic testing to receive an RAS score. My number 1 prospect of this class is, of course, Will Campbell. Still have him, could have put him in the other video, but I still have him as a tackle. I would like to test him out as a tackle first if I'm a team drafting him. I think that's about where my write-up ends on him, but we'll get back to that. Will Campbell, 6'6", 319 pounds, and you look on the screen, you can see the hand size, arm length, wingspan, all in the red there. All very bad. None of them extremely poor, though. You just get away with that. I got 4 years of data, and if this was the lowest recorded combine score, I know there's something out there going otherwise about his wingspan and stuff. There are tackle prospects who I have recorded who've had a lower wingspan, so for whatever that's worth. And I happen to know from when I was trying to collect all of the data for my blocking radius measurement, that the website who came out and said that the wingspan of Will Campbell was the lowest that they've ever recorded for an offensive tackle, does not record everything from combines, because I had to go to other sources in order to get information that was readily available on elsewhere on some players. So they don't have everything in their database. So I don't know why that is, that they don't have everything in their database, but they don't. Anyways, you can also see the athletics there. Some nice scoring in the 40 vert broad. And once again, 6'6", 319 pounds. His strength goes back to what did we say the most important thing is for tackles, what's going on in between the brains, and Will Campbell has loads of that, and he's also a leader on top of that. His IQ is his biggest strength, and his biggest weakness, as we just talked about, is his size. And Will Campbell is currently my 6th ranked prospect. I've got a 1 spot ahead of Armand Membu. He is number 6 on the consensus big board as well, and he'll probably fall a few spots by draft day. Though I disagree with that if that happens, if that's not clear by this point. Will Campbell is still the best offensive lineman in this class. Offensive lineman. I didn't say he's the best tackle in this class, that he's the best offensive lineman in this class, who I think deserves a chance to be the best offensive tackle in this class with whatever team he goes to. In fact, everyone is singing the praises of Armand Membu's athletic testing, so we're going to get to the athletic portion. I pointed that out for a reason. And meanwhile, while everybody's singing the praises of Armand Membu's athletic testing, Will Campbell had a higher RAS score relative to his size. He was more athletic with his 9.88 compared to the 9.81. Yeah, it's very close, but it's still a difference. That puts him at 17th out of the 1,379 offensive tackle prospects that Ken Plant has given RAS scores since 1987, which was 17 compared to 26. That spot jumps him up a few spots. as we went over to start this video, Will Campbell very well can become one of the best offensive linemen, offensive tackles in the league while having sub 33-inch arms. It is not optimal, but it's well within possibility. His athleticism can make up for his length deficiencies. That said, there are red flags on tape and in his PFF grading that suggest that he might fail as a tackle. We gotta be honest about it, right? PFF considers negatively graded run plays as a stable metric. What that means is that it is predictive. There is a correlation between that metric and a player's success at the next level, at least according to PFF. Will Campbell has a high amount of negatively graded run plays. As I mentioned, he has great leadership abilities. He was a team captain at LSU in his sophomore season, where he played left tackle all 3 of years, including his freshman year. He's coming out as a junior. He's still young. One thing here is clear to me. We know who our top 2 offensive linemen in this class are, and there should be really no argument about that. It's a 2-man race to who ends up getting drafted first from here on out, and I think that it could be either one of them. It could be Will Campbell. It could be Armand Membou. We'll find out. I'm very excited to find out, but for now, I am one of the ones saying I would keep Armand Membou. Will Campbell here as in the prospects of being a tackle. So, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Take care. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace out.